Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video viewer series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the racial supplement Secrets of the Draugar, designed by Jimmy Flowers and Spinterverse for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. A review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/Rogue Watson. I'll be honest, when I first read the title of this product, I thought it was Secrets of the Draugar, which conjured up images of this lovely adventure mystery that took place in the Underdark about this Drow bride-to-be, maybe a delightful romantic comedy with a D&D twist. Sadly, it is not that. That is a great idea for a fucking D&D adventure. This is Secrets of the Draugar, which is a combination Drow and Duergar, two Underdark races, which are normally very hostile to everyone, and including each other, but love finds a way. Love is very powerful, and sometimes a Drow and a Duergar could find love when they are surrounded by hate on all sides. And the result is a surprisingly kind and empathetic hybrid, which is known as the Draugar. This is a very professionally designed supplement, and the designer, when they sent me a review copy, said it was their first product. And I'm reading through this, and I do not believe them because this is very, very well designed. It's very well edited. There's zero problems. It's got lovely art throughout. It looks like a professional product that like Wizards would put out. I'm very floored by just the actual aesthetic components here are absolutely lovely and just incredible. So thumbs up on the overall layout and design. In terms of the content, what we're getting here is one new race, which is, again, based on a combination of a Drow and a Duergar. They literally have the physical and in some cases magical abilities of both races, but what really makes it the most interesting is the culture. And something I really appreciated what the designer does is go really hard on the culture and the history and kind of explaining who these people are from a lore and a narrative standpoint, instead of just going over the actual, mechanical benefits or drawbacks of playing the race. Like, that stuff is always very important to have, obviously, but what really excites me about playing different kinds of races or cultures is, get into their heads a little bit, find out what this culture is all about, what do they worship, what are their different ceremonies like, what is their existence is based on. In this case, it's really based on kind of oppression and victimization, but not totally. It's more like they've fled their existing cultures. Drow and Duergar both being very angry, very bitter, hostile. In the case of Drow, it's worshiping evil gods. In the case of Duergar may worship evil gods too, but more about how they've been enslaved and by mind flayers, and then since then they've rebelled, but now now they're slavers themselves and basically learned all the wrong lessons. So I appreciate that by having these hybrids, you're basically people of a next generation who have decided, no, fuck that. We're not going to be just a bunch of evil assholes. Instead, we're going to try to carve out this more better existence for ourselves and our people and our children. And that really came through for me in this whole cultural back history we got, which is awesome. Naming tables, we get an extra racial feat, which adds a lot of the spell casting that Duergar could do, because the big thing they can do is go invisible. I don't believe they reflect any of the enlarge or reduce thing that Duergar can do. We do get a lot of the Drow spell casting, so dancing lights and fairy fire, speaking with spiders. We do get advantage on spells against certain kinds of spells, which is the Duergar resilience, and of course they do have the good dark vision, but the sunlight sensitivity because they are an Underdark race. But it's what makes them interesting is the fact that they're nice, and I think that would make it that's what would make them interesting to find from if I was a DM looking at maybe putting a race of hybrid Draugar. I think that would be a cool shock for people. Is like, oh, this is wait, these two races have mingled together now and created this entire culture over. It's not just like one couple that created this taboo baby, although that's presented in the adventure hooks included here, but it's actually an entire community of people who have been living this way, and that would make for a really nice, non-hostile environment for the players, which would probably need one if they're in the Underdark, because everything is trying to fucking kill you in the Underdark. So that would be very helpful to use. I really like the backgrounds that are used here because they really do speak to the different ways in which somebody could live out their initial history or existence as a Draugar, Draugar. I almost said Draugar again. Hey, you could be a Draugar who is looking to be married as well. The survivor is probably the most victimized. You've got a harsh, background as somebody who was enslaved, and that was really spoke to how your existence is now, and maybe you've got a real chip on your shoulder from that. Loner, someone who's managed to survive on your own. You're running away and you're constantly in fleeing mode, but you haven't maybe had as much trauma as the survivor. And then with the non-trauma at all, you've got the exemplar, which is somebody who is basically just grew up in the community and has had a much better existence. And you've turned that into somebody who wants to champion the fact that your people have kind of found the right way to live and prosper and not be just evil, God-worshipping assholes, which is the exemplar. So those are all really great different versions. They're not just like, oh, you were a carpenter or something. They're actually like speak to your entire personality. And we do get all of those tables of the traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, which are all really, really great. So I really because a lot of times with backgrounds, I just kind of gloss over. It's like, oh yeah, my character was, a soldier, or they were a street urchin, or riff rat and all that. But with these, I actually sat and read them all, and I was like, these are really good and speak to the actual personality that would be created and the kind of the history and lore that I would make as a player making a player character based on this race. So big thumbs up on these backgrounds specifically. Then we go really hard into the religion of the Draugar, which I was blown away by, because I expect this section to be basically a paragraph or two in terms of, hey, they might worship these kind of gods, or these people might do this. Instead, we get an entire new pantheon, which involves these two gods. It's a classic life and death thing, and the Draugar don't worship evil gods, nor do they worship good gods. They instead worship very neutral gods, a life and death, and they know about the cycle of life and death. Neither god is meant to be good or evil. They're both represented by birds. The god of life is an owl, and the god of death is a raven. So there's a lot of feathers and things in their culture, which is, I think, a little bizarre because they're in the Underdark. I don't know how many fucking birds you see in the Underdark, but I admit I'm not up on my Underdark lore, so maybe I have the wrong idea, but it seems like that would be kind of a rare thing to see in the Underdark. It'd make more sense if they were like worshiping the sky and thought that was a great thing, because they don't really see the sky, but like birds, how often do you fucking see birds? But it goes really hard with having this whole ritual where it's almost like the one where you drop the chicken bones and you kind of read those. This one is feathers. You drop like a bag of feathers and you can read that and ask questions. And there's all these, it's pages and pages. There's all these tables you can do, which you can do yes, no questions, but you could also ask complex questions. And through doing all these different ways of reading the feathers, you can actually come up with different answers. That's a really cool thing. And I would have loved the designer to go a little bit further than that in providing like a sample like event, or not adventure is too strong of a word, but like an encounter where this was employed, and like they had somebody like come up and do the ritual, and maybe you had to go here to ask them a question, or this was just an option when finding the town and stuff. Would have been really awesome. This is already really great stuff, and I love that it helps bring this culture to life through this religious ceremony. I would have loved to just have a more flavorful like narrative version of this for the players to interact with. We do get subclasses, which is really great. They are thematically appropriate. They are, however, I would say mechanically boring. It's a new cleric domain and a new druid circle. The cleric domain, the harmony domain, again, makes sense. They believe in neutral gods. They come from, evil genetics. That's not really a thing, but it's a little weird in the Forgotten Realms, right? Where you've got like races that are mostly evil, which is odd and problematic. But anyway, in this case, it's the harmony domain. So you believe in, people getting along, which is definitely what the Draugar are all about, right? The entire exemplar background was about being a champion of, people who can just, let's get along. You're a hippie. However, mechanically, it's not very interesting. You gain like new cantrips, friends, message, a lot of your spells, calm emotions, revivify, speaking with animals, charm monster. Your channel divinity is just another version of charm person. When you heal somebody, you can heal yourself, which is nice, but it's not, you know, a huge, amazing thing. You add radiant damage whenever you attack at 8th level. Seems kind of weird. So none of those are very interesting. And the fact that each of these abilities takes like a sentence to explain kind of speaks to that. The Druid Circle is a little bit better. It's all about birds because, again, their culture worships the life and death, which are represented by birds. Again, I get it. It's a little weird for Underdark, but okay, we'll go with that. I don't know why the Take to the Skies 2nd level feature is its own thing, though, and they didn't build off of Wild Shape, because Druids already have Wild Shape, so why not just make it so, okay, you ignore the flying thing, and now you can just transform into birds. Instead, this is its own ability you can use once per short rest to transform into a bird. In addition to your Wild Shape, that seems kind of bizarre. At 6th level, you can straight up fly once every short rest for 10 minutes, which is very nice. But again, you can already transform into a bird, so maybe they could have done something different or more interesting there. The 10th level feature I really liked, which is whenever you're casting a spell, whenever you do damage with a weapon or a spell, feathers materialize around you. And you have to roll for them. It's 1d6 plus 6. And when you have 20 or more feathers, then you get all these other benefits. You heal, you get like a little small regeneration, and people take damage around you. I thought that was a really cool feature and mechanically interesting and unique. But you don't get it till 10th level. And as we all know, how many, adventures and campaigns actually make it up to 10th level? I'm a big fan of front loading all of the really cool features and then kind of adding on to them as you go, instead of saving really unique cool features, unless it's a really special, high level thing. But I wish that was an earlier level one. So there's some interesting ideas there, but just looking at the lower level abilities for both of them, I didn't think they were terribly mechanically rewarding, although both, again, appropriately tied into the actual culture. Draugar Adventures is Adventure Hooks, which is literally just bullet points of ideas. I had mixed feelings about this one, but I don't want to put this as an official con because this is just a completely extra thing. When you're introducing a new race with new subclasses and details and all that, I don't expect there to be adventure hooks that have to do with this race. I would have preferred if we had gotten just a sample mini adventure, or better yet, give me a sample village with NPCs to work with, and again, then you can run an event with that sample feather reading encounter. Would have been really nice, and then you could build a few adventure hooks off of that. Would have been, I think, a more interesting way to frame it versus just giving me bullet points of very kind of generic adventure ideas where it's like, oh, somebody's stealing something and it turns out it's a Draugar, or there's Draugar in a cage in a city and you have to rescue them. The problem is you could just replace that with, there's goblins in a cage, or it was goblins that did it. It doesn't really speak to this race as having those unique circumstances, whereas having that, nice hidden village that you discover and it has that rich culture would very much do that. So I think that would have been the better angle. However, even though I have complaints about it, I'm not really going to include that as an official con because this is just all extra to me. This is just extra content, and it's nice to have. I would have just done that a little bit differently. And finally, we get some sample stat blocks, which are very nice to have anytime you're adding. These aren't even new creatures. It's just a different kind of humanoid, and that's reflected in the fact that they basically just take the cleric, the mage, assassin stat blocks, and what I understand are pretty close to what those stat blocks are in the actual monster manual, but they add the Duergar, spell resistance and the sunlight sensitivity that those races have, the at will of casting, or not at will, but once per day fairy fire and darkness and all that kind of stuff. So slightly tweaked existing stat blocks that we've already seen, but hey, again, extra stuff, good to have. Absolutely no complaints about that. In fact, I think it's awesome, and I think the whole product is, again, very well designed, very complete with how it offers, a lot of these products that offer new races or new subclasses are only 5 pages long, and they just do the one thing, and maybe the description's a couple paragraphs. Whereas this one, it's pages and pages of lore and detailed history and information about their pantheon, all these sample adventure hooks and setting locations and tables for names. It's over 20 pages just based on this one racial idea, which is absolutely awesome, and I'm a big fan of how this is constructed. Let's go over my pros and cons for Secrets of the Draugar. Pros: detailed history, culture, and religion for the Draugar. As I just mentioned, they really go hard into giving me everything I could want for this race and make me actually excited to, if not play it, then explore it as a DM and utilize it as a faction of NPCs. Pro, 3 new Draugar appropriate backgrounds with tables for traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. I wanted to specifically highlight the backgrounds because I think they're very, very well designed, and I was very interested in reading through them, and that helped me get an idea for how this culture exists and the different ways in which, as an individual player character or an NPC, that they could interact with their culture and the wider world around them. Pro, Draugar stat blocks, naming tables, and location settings. Again, all the extra stuff that I included is just amazing and helps really fill this in as a complete product. And Pro, a professional layout and design. It looks amazing. This looks like a professional product with giant art pieces and, you know, all the tables and subheadings, everything just looks like something right out of an official D&D 5e book. So huge thumbs up there. I did include the subclasses as a con. I didn't include the adventure hooks, but I will say that the subclasses are thematically appropriate, but mechanically boring. None of them excited me to play at all, even though I thought the race stuff was very nice and interesting and everything surrounding it was cool. Neither of the subclasses that I feel like was interesting enough for me to take it, even if I wanted to play that kind of race. And I feel like, at least for the druid, I could have seen some ways to retweak it, make it a little bit more interesting. The cleric, I'm kind of biased. I think all clerics are a little bit on the boring side. They're just, I don't know. So it's hard for me to even think about how to make that a more interesting cleric harmony. Maybe something to do with, you know, balance things out. Maybe some mechanic there. I'm not sure. But there could have been a little bit more work, I think, on the subclasses. Final verdict, when a Drow and a Duergar love each other very much, the result is a surprisingly empathetic hybrid with a rich culture of perseverance detailed in Secrets of the Draugar. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. You can support my work at patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Christopher, Thomas, Captain Mike, Adam, Stan, Nathan, Alex, Cam, William, I'm Loudon, Lachlan, Barrett, and Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard, Lounge, Sam, Ross, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Glenny, and Nick, Farty McButterpants, Blood Angel, Veronis, Baboon, Nathan, Fassica, Tortoise, James, and Kyle. Thank you all very much for your support.